Hey guys, welcome to another Ultimate Edge webinar series, this time with Sara Spencer. Sara's from Hawaii. I know Sara for quite a few years now. We met appropriately enough through real estate, right, Sara?
Right.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Tom Howell, who also does my taxes, knows Sara really well. I think that was the initial connection. Sara is a very accomplished person. You are going to find out. She's a coach, which is what she's going to do today. She's also
Yeah.
a real estate investor. She's a private money lender. She has an MBA from Seattle University.
Seattle, that's
I
right.
believe so, right, Sara? And today you're going to talk to us about Burnout Cafe. I'm really been intrigued with that title ever since we started talking some time back, Sara. I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Right. I'm excited to share. Thanks for inviting me. Great. All right. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to Burnout Cafe. This topic is really timely and important, and it's on a lot of my clients' minds. So I created a webinar presentation on it. And so we could just, talk about it more and have conversations around how we can support each other, because this is a real problem that affects many people, especially entrepreneurs and busy professionals, which are most of my clients. And so I want to provide your listeners, John, with some strategies so they can recognize burnout, they can prevent it, manage it if it occurs. So really, ultimately, they're thriving. And what I mean by that is like they're energized and actually moving forward toward their goals. And so,
Right.
yeah, awesome. So what they're going to learn today are signs and symptoms of burnout, techniques for managing stress and building resilience, and then what are habits that might be self-sabotaging, right? So we can, turn those around before they occur as burnout in the first place. And I don't know, John, if you can relate.
Oh, I think any entrepreneur, and I've been doing it for 30 plus years, has gone through periods where they have experienced burnout. This is a very timely topic in our environment right now, so I'm looking forward to it. Matter of fact, I can tell you, I'm going to email a link to this presentation when the recording is done to some people I know. I can tell right now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So really, you're in the right place if you're sick of struggling with burnout. You really want true balance, or maybe you're feeling a little bit of like low level sullenness or anxiety, sleepless nights, and maybe you're just feeling a little bit stuck and you don't know why. So we'll talk about that. Or maybe you're frustrated. I know I work with a lot of clients that they say yes to a lot of things and they lean more toward like people pleasing, right? And they don't have that bandwidth and they want a clear path to growth and development in their career or business. And so my goal, like I'm dedicated to helping and empowering professionals, leaders, entrepreneurs, really to navigate burnout and excel in their life. And I've seen this increase, especially since COVID, because we were in that virtual hybrid management model. So that was hard for a lot of folks. And so, this really came out of that the last couple of years. And so I've worked primarily in male dominated organizations and industries, but the last couple of years, I know, John, we had talked that I've worked with almost 100 women who have faced a lot of these challenges. So there are some unique things that women do face that I'll touch on. But a lot of my male clients will tell me they're feeling the same. So I've got some resources for your clients and some freebies too. So ultimately, my goal is to really create like a mastermind or community where people can talk about these things. So how
Sarah, can I interject here for our audience now and the YouTube audience, guys? This is going to be one of those you're going to want to watch all the way through, because I know Sara does have some interesting freebie stuff, which is really valuable at the end that she's going to offer. So hang in there. It's going to be worthwhile. Thanks, Sara.
Yeah, hang in there. Thanks, John. And so how did I find this niche of supporting entrepreneurs and leaders? Well, this totally happened to me. So I was burning the candle at both ends for many years in my career. So I started in my first career in tech as in a startup in my 20s. I don't think I told you that, John, but I'd be like the first one in the office. I'm pulling those late nights. I was working evenings and weekends, and I'm like, I'm in my 20s, I can handle this. But what ended up happening was those behaviors and tendencies went with me to other leadership positions. And so I ended up with stress-induced autoimmune issues. I was exhausted, my hair was falling out, I was bloated, my pants couldn't fit. Like I was in full burnout and I didn't know
Wow.
what it was. Yeah. And I can even, I was even working on my flex days. I don't know if you can relate or any of the listeners, but just go ahead and put a thumbs up if you can relate to like what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
I was even passed up for promotions. Can you believe that? Well, and I'll tell you why, because when I allowed myself to get into full burnout, I wasn't upholding healthy boundaries. I wasn't being seen and branded as the leader I wanted to be. I was a great team player, someone who could say yes to a lot of things, but I wasn't renegotiating workload, right? And I wasn't seen as that person that needed to, be elevated to the next level. And, many of you can relate to receiving also vague feedback at the end of the year. And so what ends up happening is we get these imposter syndromes in our head where we can lose belief in ourselves. And so I don't know if anybody want to just put a thumbs up in the chat if you can relate. I don't know, John, is anybody messaging?
I no messages, but I saw some thumbs up coming through there. So
Okay, so
it's resonating.
It's resonating. Yeah. And so let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Sara Spencer. I get what you're struggling with. I've been there. I've helped and developed a lot of people in the last 10 years to really have clarity on their goals, either internally inside of a corporation or externally building a business. Worked with a lot of men in my past 10 years, but these last couple of years, it's just been a lot of women that I've been partnering with. And so I understand those unique habits. I'm really passionate about helping people get out of burnout. And to do that, we've got to learn the leadership skills, right? That will help us, level up and help us move forward and do our business with more ease. Because after these last couple of years working with the clients I have, I'm a firm believer that we don't need to self-sacrifice. Like we actually don't need to burn the candle at both ends working weekends, and we can have restful nights. And so I want to talk about feelings and thoughts that can occur when we're on the brink or inside a burnout. So you might notice yourself feeling empty or depleted, because one of the main effects of burnout is that reduced productivity and creativity, or maybe you're struggling completing tasks, right? That's also a sign. Or maybe you're in your head and your confidence is waning. You might start to believe that imposter syndrome voice, like you're not being taken seriously, or maybe you feel like you don't look the part, or you're too young, or you're too old, or you're getting vague feedback and you're wondering about your abilities. And these ruminating thoughts can actually lead to more challenges in your career or business and can lead to stress and burnout. Or maybe this is you're laying up at night, you're feeling lack of support, anxiety, and you're noticing like, oh my gosh, I'm not sleeping fully, right? It can lead to insomnia, fatigue, even low level depression. So we want to really make sure like we're monitoring our mental state as we're taking on big things in our career and our business, because we want to be also fulfilled as we're doing those. So, before we go into the tips and the techniques and things, I just want to check in with you guys, with your listeners, John, just to get a baseline, like what level of burnout are you on? So when you said yes to the webinar today, like what's your burnout baseline? Like, are you light roast? Like the gal with the stress headache? Are you medium roasted? Maybe you really could use a nap on your desk. Are you dark roasted? You actually could so sleeping on the floor. And this is a little tongue in cheek, this skeleton here. But we don't want it to get to this state, right? We don't want to be like feeling cracked and on edge. And so I just want to acknowledge that even though this is a bit tongue in cheek, burnout is really on the rise right now. And it's a growing concern for both men and women in various industries, right? And I know in the Seattle area, there's a lot of tech folks that I work with who they actually need to take like extended leaves so they can recover from burnout. But what if we could maintain these things? What if we could work through these things and still be productive and successful in our role, right? And, I do just want to mention that, research does show that women can experience a greater level of burnout than men just because of like social upbringing or that ability, they can vacillate between and left hemisphere of the brain quickly, and that can lead to rumination, right? Also can, societally we're, expected to caretake and caregive, and that can lead to lack of self-care. And so I've got some tips, and just curious if anybody wants to put in the chat, like, which one are you? Lightly, medium, dark roasted?
I think the predominant one I see right now is medium roasted, Sarah. So,
Okay.
along the path there.
So on the edge, and I just want to say, like, once we get into burnout, it's hard to come back. Like, it can cause like hormonal shifts, other things. So we want to, if we're at medium roasted, I would say that's good because we can implement some of this secret sauce, right? And start building habits. And I want you to think about these secret tips as like, we're not going to incorporate all of them, but maybe as you listen, pick one that really resonates with you and do that for 30 days, right? Just pick one at a time. But because I am going to give you a lot of tips today. And so, and also before we get started, do you have any writing material? Do you have a journal or even your phone to take pictures of the slides and the notes? Because this is something that, I recommend my clients do, like maybe on the weekend with a cup of coffee. They just want to journal and kind of like see where they're at with these tips. So here's the 3 secrets. All right. And you might be thinking, I don't know, John, if you're thinking like, because you haven't seen this presentation, like, oh my gosh, they're so simple, right? Healthy boundaries, self-care, maintaining your state. But the
Sarah,
question,
I find that simplicity is usually the key to most everything, right?
right, right.
Yeah,
And they're simple in a sense, like to like think them through, like, oh yeah, I could do this. But the
right.
embodiment is where it
Yeah.
gets difficult for people because we know how hard it is to change a habit. Everybody does, especially the beginning of the year, like, yeah, I want to go to the gym more, right? And then we kind of notice how, that rubber band and that opening for that inspiration can change. So we want to talk about too, how do we create, and I have some resources on creating like good habits, but we'll start with the first one, healthy boundaries. So when we don't have them, we can really feel them and it doesn't feel good, right? And we may be branding ourselves as that great worker bee, that really helpful team player, right? So we want to like remember healthy boundaries is important. And sometimes when our boundaries are like pushed too much, we notice ourselves like doing a couple of things. We might micromanage, maybe we ghost, or maybe we get stuck in doing the tactical versus the strategic part of our role. So that's kind of when we notice like our boundaries getting like pushed.
Can I
Self-care.
ask a question around that one, Sarah? And you may be covering this because you're right. I've been looking forward to this presentation. I have not seen it yet. And I know you've been doing this for years, so I'm really been looking forward to it. Are there any signs of unhealthy boundaries? And what would you define as an unhealthy boundary, or where's the healthy boundary at?
Yeah. So that's like actually you're going right into our next slides. So think about your boundaries as like a white picket fence around your house, right? And so we notice our boundaries through our feelings, right? And so we do need to be heightening like our emotional intelligence, our self-awareness. But I am going to talk about those
Good.
and
Okay.
some tips to support ourselves with those. Yeah, really good question because that's so important. And I say healthy boundaries because it's like sometimes people think boundaries as like a negative thing, like, oh, boundaries, like you don't want me to get too close. And that's not true. That's actually like having reciprocity in all our relationships and with ourselves. Second one, self-care. This is really important because leadership is energy and it's about, we want to create a lifestyle where self-care for for ourselves is just as important as for others. So I know that I caregive with my brother, my mom, like we support her and help her out. And it's even for like those like caring for children or caring for elderly, like this is so important. And it's not just about spa days, those are great. Having facials, those are great. But how do you manage your energy reserves? Right. So we're going to talk about how we look at our whole self and we can
Good.
optimize our self-care habits. And then the third one is maintaining your state. So, right, I mentioned some of us will naturally desire harmony more due to our social upbringing, like, that people pleasing. But we want to look again how we're branding ourselves as a leader, as a business owner. We want to maintain our confidence. We want to be able to identify the state and actually energetically get there when we're out of it. So for most of my clients, they want to show up as confident and certain. And so we'll talk about that state management. So let's start with healthy boundaries. So this is like the question you're asking me. So I want you to think about those boundaries as that white picket fence around your house. How tall is it? How deep does it go? How secure is it in the ground? Like, could somebody actually just push that fence over, or could they blow it over? Like, so think about that. And we notice it, like I said, through our feelings. And since we know that burnout is so serious and it can lead to such a wide ranging impact, we want to think about like how could we support ourselves by strengthening that fence, right? And so here's some tips, right? So taking control of your workload, renegotiating tasks is great. I work with clients on, and I'll give you a leadership communication technique later in the presentation, but that's going to help you with the renegotiation. How do you strategically manage your calendar? And how do you assess what's feasible actually within your schedule? And so one calendar tip that I give my clients, and you can take this now, right? We're midweek, so maybe next Wednesday, check in with yourself. Like, is this mine? Ask yourself when you're going into all your meetings, like, is this mine to do? Is this mine to attend? Is there anyone else on your team or within your business that you could be developing, right, to take that on? So I talk with clients about slowing down to speed up, right? Because that being a developer of people is really important to have success in your business. And one of my clients I work with, I'll share this story. He was struggling, but now he's known as a developer of people. So he looks at the business more strategically and how it's also like that cross-functional training, but what are people's motivations? Where do they see themselves in the next couple of years? This is if you have a team and also in your business, right? So if people want to grow, where are they going to get that training? Well, it's going to be through you as their leader, right? So how can you build a plan for each individual on your team? And that's actually going to help with burnout, stress, the time that you put into your business and your work, because we can't do it all. If we want to grow and be successful, we need a team of people around us, but we also need to know who's doing that work, right? So think about how you can be a developer of people, right? And then you're modeling that for your team too. So another tip is learning to say no. I know folks that it's difficult, but practice. Just have practice with being like, no, and I can do that. No, this is all I can give at this time. And, right? So like, what's the win-win in the conversation? So practice saying no. Even notice if it feels uncomfortable, because that means we do need to practice it more, right? So, and also check in with that people pleaser, right? We all have some level of it. Some it may be more than others, but it all begins with self-awareness. And so, if listeners out there want to take a picture of this slide, because maybe you don't have the opportunity now to really dive in and answer these questions, but this is all about noticing when we are eager to people please, because it can be on one side very nice to be polite, but it also can be really tough when it comes out too much. And there's a book I recommend for your female listeners who are maybe like leaders. It's called How Women Rise. I don't know if you want to put that into the chat, John, but it talks about the 12 habits that women will do more than men. Men also struggle with it, but one of them is people pleasing, and it gives you even more tips about this tendency. So take a picture, and what I'd love for you to do is to just journal, like take a situation in the last week where you noticed yourself people pleasing. What did you gain from it? How did you feel about it? In what ways did you notice maybe it limited any effectiveness, if it did? And then just check in, like, where did that behavior even manifest itself from, right? And so what I want you just to do is just increase your self-awareness around this tendency, because then that's going to help you notice, where do I need to put up some more healthy boundaries in my life? So I don't know, any questions, John, because we're going to move on to self-care, but any questions about boundaries before we go to the next?
This is kind of a question that goes back to something you said just a minute ago. It kind of touches on this. When you said put something in place for 30 days, is that kind of the time frame you think it takes, Sarah, to develop that habit, or is it the 21-day model, or how would you speak to that?
Yeah, I've heard like two different things. I've heard 30 and 60. So my recommendation is just practice it for 30. Make sure you check back in at the end of 30 days, because this is what people will forget, is like check back in. How did you do on that new boundary habit, right? Did you do it for a week and then you stopped? Well, what are you learning about yourself, right? So and that's where like working with a coach is really helpful when you want to make change, because that coach is going to help you. So if you don't hire a coach, have an accountability partner, right?
Sure.
So maybe your spouse or a trusted colleague, right? Or a business partner, like, hey, I want to put this in place for 30 days. Like, what day are we at? The 13th. Hey, the 13th of April, can you check in with me on how I did, and can we have a conversation? Because that if we don't have the accountability, we're really not going to change, and then we'll just keep getting what we're getting in life. So yeah, try it for 30 days, check in with your buddy, and then maybe take on like the next habit that you want to change.
Got it. Good.
Yeah, great question. So self-care, moving on to secret number 2. So we're always out in the world giving and supporting and helping, right? Especially if we're a business owner or in a leadership role. And so, as I mentioned, leadership is energy. So we want to manage these reserves. And what I do with my clients is I help my clients look at their whole self, like their whole being, and then to regularly check in with yourself, like, how is your spiritual health? Your emotional health, mental, physical. And, sometimes certain clients or people will hear spiritual and they might be like, they might not resonate with that word, but it can also mean being in nature, reading motivational text, and believing in God, having a higher power or a mindfulness practice. Like, what is something that's unique to you that you can lean on and challenges that's greater than you? That's what I mean by spirituality. And emotional, how is your emotional state? Like, how are you feeling throughout the day? What are the primary feelings you are experiencing, right? So just without judgment, like, just be noticing these things. Mental, what thoughts are you having throughout the day? Are they more positive or more negative? So research shows, right, we have our prefrontal cortex and the reptilian part of our mind, that human beings will tend to lean more to the negative because we want to keep ourselves safe. And so this is an active practice to notice what you're thinking, what you're saying to yourself. And we'll talk about this in more detail. And then the bottom, the base, is the physical, right? Because if we don't have this functioning, that's it, right? So think of that physical as your base. Like, how much movement are you getting? What food are you eating? How much water are you drinking? How is your breath and your sleep and your rest? So noticing these 4 things. So it's really crucial to have that sleep routine for overall physical health. And it's vital, right, for our mental health too. And it really does affect other areas, right, in the pyramid. And then maintaining hydration. I just started watching the show Naked and Afraid. And, after 24, 48 hours, you see what happens when they don't drink water. They're not focused. They can't move. They're just laying around. So really noticing, like, am I getting hydrated, right? And this physical can also include, like, as we get like older and we're pushing ourselves to big goals, like, how are our hormones doing? So I always say, like, check in with your doctor too for the physical. And so just as an observer, like, how would you rate yourself? Like, most of my clients are super maxed out in emotional and mental. That's what I've seen. Like, spiritual and physical, it's like, that's an afterthought, Sarah. Like, I need to focus on getting this done. But what ends up happening is then we start to feel depleted, right? Then we can lean into that burnout, and we know what happens, right? And so some things that we can do is we can delegate. Remember, we talked about being a developer of people, right? Delegating tasks, creating an environment of development. We can lean on colleagues and friends. We can take breaks throughout the day. We can recharge and refocus through journaling or spending time with loved ones, right? And so those are just a few tips. But let's reflect on where we're at and get a baseline. So go ahead and take a picture of this. And remember too, when you look at this, self-care is not selfish. It is necessary for your overall health and happiness, right? Especially if we're giving to others and we're developing things, this is a priority. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being lowest, 5 being highest, where would you say that you're at with your overall self-care? So where would you rate yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And then also, John, for the listeners, if you want to put my email in there, I have a energy management assessment, and they can shoot me an email, just put energy assessment, and I can send it to them. So it'll help, it'll give little activities so they can rate themselves. So
Very good.
my recommendation is start at the base, okay? Like get the movement in your day. And I work with lots of busy people, but what I recommend is every 2 hours, do 10 minutes. 10 minutes of jumping jacks. Maybe it's a short walk for your dog if you're working from home. Maybe you've got a bike you can jump on, right? Or do some, jump rope or even stretching, right? That's going to help you clear your head and feel more energized. And then at the end of the day, you're going to have 40 minutes instead of just 10 minutes because you're doing it every 2 hours. So my busy like VPs and CEOs and business owners, they do small bursts of activities throughout the day. They have weights by their desk, right? So remember that physical is really important and you don't have to do a lot at once. Okay. And then, so we already talked about the energy management tool. So go ahead and email me and I'll send that to you. And now the rest of my presentation talks about these other areas of self-care and like maintaining your state. So this is about, right, we talked about emotional and mental. So maintaining your state is about engaging your nervous system. So when we're activating our nervous system in a positive way, right, it's going to help us feel more confident. It's going to shift our nervous system. And so we also talked about our mindset and that as humans, we're meaning-making machines. We're making meaning on certain things, right? So we have these constant thoughts throughout the day. And I like to call them, when they're positive and supportive, are sage thoughts. And maybe when they're limiting us and they want to keep us safe and we're judging people and our circumstances, those are our saboteur thoughts that can limit our potential. They can lead to rumination. So we want to be able to intervene those. So call those limiting voices like our judge, our inner critic, right? And we all do it. Like nobody's like not judging everything throughout the day, but we want to make it like an active part of our day to like notice our thoughts and like get back on like, how do you actually want to feel throughout the day? How do you want your state to be? Because that rumination can cause inefficiencies because it causes emotional pain. And that's going to cause us to like pull back from things. Maybe as a business owner, we need to engage, we need to make sales, we need people, we need to talk to people, right? If we've got this state that's unsupportive and judgmental, it's going to cause a lot of emotional pain and we're going to procrastinate and we're not going to be productive. So we want to intercept this emotional and mental state, and we do it through reframing, right? And so, but first, let's take out our journals, and I want you to reflect on, and like I said, you can just take a picture, and then I know we're like coming up on time. I have a few more slides. Is that okay if we keep going?
That's just fine, Sarah. You're doing good.
Okay, great. I just always want to respect people's time, but take a picture of this and think about your thoughts this week. What are some of the thoughts you're saying to yourself? Anything specific about who you were with or what you were doing? And how did those make you feel? And how could we reframe them? And we'll talk about how do we reframe, right? And so reframing is really important because that is going to be the interceptor, right, into our nervous system, right? And so the reframe is, what is the gift and opportunity here? Like, what am I learning from this challenge? Right. And here's one reason, because those thoughts and feelings are going to trigger actions. So if we're not ultimately getting the goals that we want, we've got to step back and look at our actions, right? Our habits, right? And then we step back even more, like, what are those ultimate thoughts and feelings without any judgment, right? And then how can we intercept them, right? And we can intercept them because we can't hold two contradictory feelings at once. Like, I can't be pissed off and feeling grateful, right? And so if there's a challenge you've got, or you're bumping up a wall, like, how can you reframe that and to find the gift and the opportunity? And that's going to get you to a different feeling quicker, right? So I want you to feel the best in your body. I don't want you to feel in like negativity too long, but we all go through experiences of grief. So I don't want to, like, say you've got to have this fake positivity and move forward. Grief is grief and we've got to experience it. But when we're emotionally intelligent, we want to be able to notice that and like reframe it quicker, right? And so it's a skill to shift our nervous system. And remember when I talked about the 10 minutes of physical activity every 2 hours, that's also going to play into here. It's also going to shift your state too. So definitely be practicing those. And think about it as you're going to the gym for your mind and your feelings, right? You're replacing those feelings with supportive ones of your goal. And this is for you. This isn't for anyone else, right? Because who doesn't want to be more happy and more fulfilled as we move towards these big goals that we're doing, right? So just go ahead and put a chat in the, or put a thumbs up in the chat if you can relate to that and you want more of that.
Guys.
Cool. So why is this important? So I want to help you guys like break the glass ceiling that's in all of our minds, right? Because it's not due to lack of skills or talent. We're in a role for a reason, but we've got these things, right, that we come up against. And so, but if we know that they're there, right, like I said, work on one skill a month, one habit a month, so you can have greater peace, right? You can have the state that you want. All right. And so I know I said I'd give you like one additional tip. Now this is about delegation and feedback. So this touches boundaries, it touches self-care, it touches maintaining your state. So it's having a tool. I love to use this with my clients so that they're staying engaged in conversation with their team. And it's a feedback model from the Center of Creative Leadership that helps people communicate more effectively, right? You can practice in the mirror, you can practice with that trusted partner, but it's a great tool for expressing your thoughts. It helps you maintain your boundaries, right, with your self-care and yourself to get you out of burnout, and you can actually do more, right? And so here it is. So the tool is called SBI squared. And if you want to be known as a developer of people, as well as having other people in your business like support you and do it the right way, we need to give them feedback. And it's reinforcing feedback and redirecting feedback. So reinforcing is usually positive feedback, like great job. Redirecting is negative. And what it does is it helps to hit people's esteem needs. It helps us stay in relationship, right? Because we want to have the right relationships, and we want to also share our thoughts and help people get back on track or continue doing what they're doing great, right? And so this tool, right? So think about it as providing either like a business partner or a team member, an employee, like what is the situation? What is the behavior that you are seeing? And what is the impact that they're having, right? And one thing I notice is leaders will leave off the impact, right? And so that also, so that one right there hits the esteem needs. But for the redirecting, it's great because a lot of people will ghost, or they will micromanage, or they will just do things themselves versus getting into the conversation that they may see as negative. So think of it as redirecting feedback. So we want to share the situation, the behavior, and the impact. And then the BI squared is what could that person do differently to get them back on track? I don't know, John, if you can relate. I think, every time I have a conversation with you, I feel like you're a really good communicator, but does this tool resonate with you?
Yeah, I think it does. And, I think this is something we could probably spend a full another 30 minutes on, isn't it, Sarah,
Yes.
to kind of
Yes.
develop that. Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, yeah, we totally can. So because we're coming up against time, but I want to help your listeners, have that communication leadership skills to level up their business and career and do it without the burnout. And so I know I mentioned that I'm going to give you guys some freebies. So I do offer a free discovery call really to help you get that roadmap to up level your leadership or your business and get out of burnout. And so, John, I'll go ahead and I'll send you a link to how your listeners can sign up. You can just go onto my Calendly and find 30 minutes because we don't want to waste another 2 to 5 years feeling stuck, feeling burnout, having those sleepless nights, right? So I'll send you that link. And so I'm curious in the chat for those folks who are listening, or for the people who are listening to the recording, like, what did you resonate with? Like, maybe what was your challenge today? What did you resonate with? And what's one new action you want to experiment with?
Okay, guys, let's fill up the chat box here. I'd be interested in hearing it from you as well. What resonates with you, and what action item did you come out of with this? And Sarah, one of the questions I want to ask you, you mentioned journaling a couple, 3 times here in different spots in this. And I've tried to journal and I haven't really been successful at it. And I'm not sure if I really understand the true benefits of it. I'd like to give you the opportunity here to kind of explain why journaling can be so effective for people. I've heard this from a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've heard the studies about the Harvard graduates that they did. So I love to follow. My gosh, what is his name? Andrew Huberman. I don't know if any of your listeners follow Andrew Huberman, but he was talking about, he's a Stanford professor in neuroscience, and then he also has this really cool podcast. But he was talking about the study of the Harvard grads that wrote down their action or their goals for their life, and the ones that didn't. And then they went back like 20 years later. The ones who wrote them down were more successful than the ones who didn't. So they had like followed through. So something happens when we put hand to paper. So there's something happening like with our mind. But what I tell my busy leaders is, you don't need to write like, "Dear Journal, this is what happened to me today." Bullet it, get something out. Like, what are you like, especially with the thoughts and the feelings. So maybe you want to have a little notepad at the end of the day. It's like, what were my dominant feelings at the end of the day? Like, I couldn't stand this person. I had a great day. I had an amazing conversation. I feel gratitude, right? So just to be heightening what is your dominant feeling pattern throughout the day, and with who. And maybe it's also like writing down your thoughts throughout the day. Or maybe it's writing out like how you felt about achieving your goals or doing something hard. So I recommend even like just bulleting things, so you have some opportunity to self-reflect at the end of the month. I do a lot of journaling with my calendar. So I have a calendar. I know it sounds very, very feminine. It's called the Passion Planner. At the end of the month, I look at like, where did I go? Where did I spend my time? Where did I focus? And it's color coded. So was I doing the things that I actually wanted to get me forward, to move me forward in all these different areas of my life, like physical, my business, right? Like my income, my relationships, like what actually makes you fulfilled, and are you doing those things, or are you spending a lot of time maybe on Netflix or in conversations and with people that really are not supportive of your overall greater well-being, right? So journaling can be multifaceted. I don't think it's just writing into your journal. Like, I think it's unique for everyone. So I don't know, from what I said, John, is there anything you want to do differently with your journaling?
How frequently do you journal, Sarah?
Every day.
Okay. Is it like every morning or every night? It's the same time of the day, every day?
Oh, I'm not that regimented, but I do want to know that what I did is actually moving me forward. So I kind of just check in with myself so my journal is more like journal/calendar. And because I am running multiple things, right? And I'm working with clients. So, and then I also have health goals, right? So, so I'm incorporating those too. And then who are the people that I want to like be in relationship with, right? So am I checking in with those folks and with my business team? Yeah.
Okay.
So mine is more like I look at it in the evening before I go to bed, and then I'll jot down some reflection, and then I'll look at it in the morning, like at the start of my day. So like I'm really clear, like where am I going? What are the things I'm working on today? I do give myself some space too for downtime, but as an entrepreneur, not having a manager, it is like a total like mind change, right? So you
For
have to be
sure.
a manager, and you have to manage your time well and your resources, which is your energy well. And so that's one of the reasons why I do like journaling within my calendar. So that might work for some of your listeners.
Sara, I know that you also, I didn't mention this, that you're also relatively recently, maybe not so recent, into annuities and other tools of that nature. Do you want to speak to that for just a minute?
Sure, sure. I grew up with parents who were, living paycheck to paycheck. They were excited that, most of their kids went and got continuing education and went to school. And so something that's just evolved, I think, through my coaching in my own business life, like I always was looking at real estate as a way to level up. First it was buying my first home, and then I was like, oh my gosh, look at all this equity. Oh my gosh. Like I just started learning along the way and meeting people like yourself and Tom, and the power in that. And then recently I started even planning even more, like how can I diversify? And so I started learning about annuities, IULs, other plans that can help create generational wealth, along with real estate, which is so powerful as well. And as you can see, like with that and coaching, you can't manage it all. So you need partners, right? You need good
Right.
partners that you can trust, and that are going to support you in moving forward. So I also help with my coaching, and this could be a conversation in the discovery call too, is like, okay, so overall, if we look at like the whole pie of your life, like leadership, career, business, where do you see yourself like in your retirement? Like, what is your runway right now, and then where do you want to see yourself? And so I work with clients on that capacity too, because it really supports, right, that whole you want to live your best life, you want to have a great career, but what's next, right? You're doing that for what? So I did bring those services in to support my clients.
Good. All right. By the any chance are we going to have the slides available for the audience? Can you send those to me, Sara? Your
Sure.
PowerPoint? I
Yeah.
know they'd be great. Angelique, by the way, should give you a thumbs up on the goal study that Andrew Huberman's talked about. So good job in bringing that.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah,
And she also says, thanks for helping people live their best life. Good job.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad that your listeners were here. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to talk. And like I said, if you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Sara, for your time. I really appreciate it. I think we're going to have you back on and delve a little deeper into some of these topics if you would like.
For sure. I would love that.
Sara, any closing comments? Anything at all?
Yeah, just I know this was a lot, and suspend judgment as you look through like all of these habits and things, right? And from that space, like what is one thing that you got from today that will support you and your goals, right? Your business, career, and your life. And pick one. Start there.
Good start. Absolutely. Well, we got some thumbs up here and thank you. So thanks, Sara, for your time today. Appreciate it very much. Those of you hanging out with us with another Ultimate Edge webinar, thanks for hanging out with us today. We appreciate it.